I never thought that the same people who laughed at me for cleaning their floors would one day have to ring my doorbell and wait outside the gate, begging to be let in. In today's story, I'm going to tell you how a rich, arrogant family called me the poor maid, treated me like I was furniture, and how, in the end, I quietly inherited the very mansion they thought I wasn't worthy of walking through. If you enjoy long, emotional revenge stories about rich versus poor, toxic families, and karma working in unexpected ways, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and stay until the very end, because the way this house changes hands is something they never saw coming, but I did. My name is Mariana, and for most of my life, the only houses I entered were the ones I cleaned. I grew up with my mother and my younger brother in a small, rented place on the outskirts of the city, 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, thin walls, and a kitchen that always smelled like something simple cooking on the stove. My father left when I was 8. He said he was going to find better work in another state and never came back. My mother never spoke badly about him, but the way she stared at his empty side of the bed at night told me everything I needed to know. We never starved, but we never had enough. There were months when choosing between paying the electricity bill and buying my brother's medicine meant my mother crying in the bathroom with the door closed. I had to grow up fast. I stopped dreaming about university and started dreaming about a job that would at least cover the rent on time. When a neighbor told us there was a rich family looking for a live-in maid, someone who could cook, clean, and stay in a room inside their mansion, it sounded almost like a miracle. Food, a roof, a salary, and the possibility of sending money home. I didn't hesitate. I said yes, thinking I was walking into a job. I didn't know I was walking into a war of dignity. The first time I saw the mansion, I felt like a character walking into a movie. Tall white walls, a black iron gate, a long driveway lined with perfectly trimmed bushes, and fountains I'd only ever seen in shopping malls. The house itself had huge windows, balconies, and a front door so large it looked like it had been stolen from a palace. I rang the bell, holding my small suitcase and my mother's old rosary in my pocket for courage. The door was opened by a woman in her 50s, dressed in expensive casual clothes, with perfectly styled hair and an expression that said she was used to being obeyed. "Mariana?" she asked, her eyes quickly scanning me from head to toe. I nodded. "I'm Helena," she said. "The lady of the house." Behind her, I could see the hallway, marble floors, artwork, a staircase that branched in 2 directions. I had never been anywhere like that. She didn't smile. She didn't welcome me. She simply turned and said, "Come, we'll go over the rules." That was my introduction to the family. Helena led me to a small room near the back of the house, close to the kitchen and the service entrance. It had a narrow bed, a wardrobe, and a tiny window that looked out onto the wall separating the mansion from the neighbor's property. "This will be your room," she said. "You will not bring guests here. You will not use the front door. You will not go upstairs unless I ask you to." She spoke with the same tone someone might use to program a device. She went through a list of tasks: wake up before everyone else, prepare breakfast, clean the common areas, wash and iron the family's clothes, help the cook with lunch and dinner, be available at all times if anyone needed anything. "And one more thing," she added, looking me straight in the eyes, "you are part of the staff, not part of the family. Be invisible unless we call you." "Understood," I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. She hadn't hired a person, she had acquired a function. The family consisted of Helena, her husband Ricardo, their 2 grown children, Lucas and Bianca, and one other person, Ricardo's elderly mother, Donna Teresa. Ricardo was the type of man who spoke loudly, laughed louder, and never picked up anything he dropped. To him, the world was divided into people who served and people who were served, and he was very used to being in the second group. Lucas was in his mid-20s, obsessed with his image, always on his phone, posting gym selfies and videos of parties. Bianca was a little younger, permanently annoyed, and spoke to me as if every sentence was an order. "Water," she would say, not even looking up from her phone. Now, the first week, I made mistakes. I forgot to iron a shirt. I didn't hear someone calling from the other side of the house. I burned a piece of toast. Each small error was treated like a crime. "Are you stupid?" Helena snapped one morning when the coffee wasn't strong enough. "Do they not teach you basic things where you come from?" I apologized over and over, my hands shaking. The only person in that house who ever asked me if I was tired, or if I had eaten, or if I had family, was Donna Teresa. She was in her late 70s, moved slowly, and spent most of her time in a big armchair by the window, with a blanket over her legs. Her voice was soft but sharp, the kind of voice that had seen a lot and forgotten nothing. "What's your name again, dear?" she asked the first time I brought her tea. "Mariana," I replied. She smiled. "Beautiful name. Sit for a second. Tell me where you're from." I hesitated, glancing toward the door. "No one will die if their coffee is 5 minutes late," she said. "Sit." So I did. And little by little, we started talking. The first time I heard it, the words felt like a slap. It was a Saturday afternoon, and Helena's relatives had come over, her sister, brother-in-law, and 2 teenage nieces. They were all dressed in brand names that screamed money. I was serving snacks in the living room while they talked. One of the nieces, looking at a picture on her phone of some celebrity's mansion, said, "Aunt Helena, your house could totally be in a magazine, except maybe for the staff area. It's kind of depressing." They laughed. Her sister Larissa tilted her head in my direction and said, in a voice that was meant to be a whisper but wasn't, "Oh, don't worry. The poor maid probably thinks this is luxury. Compared to where she came from, this is like a palace." They all giggled. Helena didn't correct her. She didn't say my name. She didn't say, "Don't talk about her like that." She just smiled and sipped her drink. Throughout the evening, the phrase kept coming back. "The poor maid this. The poor maid that." As if that were my actual name. I kept my face neutral, my eyes down. Years of being taught not to make scenes, not to talk back, not to risk losing a job had trained me well. But inside, something hard and heavy began to form. It wasn't just their words. It was everything. They left their mess everywhere, knowing I would pick it up. They snapped their fingers to call me. They complained if I took too long to answer, even if I had been cleaning something on the other side of the house. Once, during a birthday party for Bianca, one of her friends stumbled into the kitchen drunk, looked me up and down, and said, "Wow, your maid is kind of pretty. Did you order her online or what?" Another time, Lucas's friends made jokes about how I must dream about living in a room like theirs one day and how people from the slums must feel blessed just to see this house up close. They didn't see me as a person. I was part of the landscape. Background. Useful, but not important. The only exception remained Donna Teresa. She would call me into her room with a little bell, not to order me around, but to talk. She asked about my mother, my brother, my childhood. She listened without judgment when I told her I'd given up on studying to work full-time. That I sent most of my salary home. That sometimes I missed having a life that wasn't just cleaning up after other people's happiness. "You work hard," she said once, holding my hand with surprising strength. "You have more dignity than half the people in this house." I smiled, embarrassed, but her words stayed with me. They were one of the few things that made the days feel less heavy. With time, Donna Teresa's health started to decline. She got tired more easily, sometimes confused, sometimes in pain. The family responded by complaining, "She's getting difficult." Helena would say, "It's exhausting." "She always needs something," Bianca added. First it was her stories, now it's her pills. What's next? More and more, they left her in her room, with the TV on too loud and no one to talk to. Except me. I was the one who made sure she took her medication on time. I was the one who helped her sit up, who adjusted her pillows, who brought her tea the way she liked it, with honey and a slice of lemon. At night, when the rest of the family was out at dinners and events, I would hear her call softly, "Mariana, are you still awake?" And I would go sit by her bed, listening to her tell stories about the past, about when she was young and poor herself, about how the house hadn't always felt so cold. "You know," she said once, her eyes fixed on the ceiling, "I wasn't born rich. One married into this. Sometimes I think my son and his wife forget that." She turned her head to look at me. "Never be ashamed of where you come from, dear. Shame is for people who have everything and still choose to be cruel." I squeezed her hand, feeling my throat close. I was the maid. She was the grandmother of the house. But in those moments, we were just 2 women who understood each other. As her health worsened, doctors started talking about serious things. Long-term care, possible hospitalizations, the need to think about arrangements. Helena and Ricardo didn't handle it well. They fought about money, about responsibility, about who had to deal with her more. One afternoon, I brought tea to the living room and heard them arguing. "We need to move her to a facility," Helena said. "She needs care we can't provide. And frankly, this is affecting our lives." "She doesn't want to go to a home," Ricardo replied. She wants to stay here. She wants a lot of things, Helena snapped. She also wants us to sit around listening to her stories all day. We have lives, Ricardo. We can't be prisoners in our own house because of her. I quietly backed away before they saw me, my heart pounding with anger. That evening, when I helped Donna Teresa go to bed, she seemed more tired than usual. Did you hear them? She asked softly. I froze. I'm old, not deaf, she said, managing a small smile. I know what they think of me. I know what they think of you. She was quiet for a moment, then added, but I also know something they don't. What is that? I asked. She looked at me, her eyes suddenly sharp, almost young. I still decide what happens to this house. A few days later, a lawyer came to the house. He was an older man, well-dressed but kind-eyed, carrying a leather briefcase. Helena assumed he was there for some investment or business issue. She barely greeted him before saying she didn't have much time. He replied that he was there at the request of Donna Teresa. They all went pale. I wasn't in the room when they discussed it, but from the raised voices I heard later, I understood enough. She wants to change her will at this age, Helena said, incredulous. What for? Everything is already settled. This is her legal right, the lawyer responded calmly. And her decision. Over the next week, there were private meetings between him and Donna Teresa in her room. Sometimes Helena or Ricardo tried to be present, but she would ask them to leave. Not you, she'd say, this is my business. Once, she called me in while he was there. Mariana, she said, sit. You should hear some of this. I panicked. It's not my place, Donna Teresa, I protested. It is more your place than you think, she replied. The lawyer cleared his throat. Your presence here is at her request, he said kindly. You don't need to say anything. Just listen. I sat, my hands cold. Without going into details, they talked about values, about who had been there for her, about moral heirs versus blood heirs. At one point, she looked straight at me and said, I don't want my legacy to stay in the hands of people who see this house only as a trophy. I want it to go to someone who knows what it means to take care of a home. I didn't fully understand then what she meant. But I would. A few months later, on a quiet morning, I brought breakfast to her room and found her still, her chest no longer rising. Her eyes closed as if she had simply fallen asleep in the middle of a story. I called for help. Doctors came. Family members cried, some more convincingly than others. Helena organized a large, elegant funeral, full of flowers and important people, but very little genuine grief. I stood at the back of the ceremony, holding back my tears. I had lost the only person in that house who saw me as more than the poor maid. After the funeral, things in the house became tense. There were whispered conversations, closed doors, and a constant air of expectation. They were waiting for the will. It came 2 weeks later. The lawyer returned, this time asking that the entire immediate family be present, including me. I don't think that's necessary, Helena said, frowning when she saw me at the doorway. It is, he replied, by Donna Teresa's request. We all sat in the main living room. Helena, rigid on the sofa. Ricardo, pretending to be calm. Lucas and Bianca, trying to look respectful and not purely hungry. And me, in a corner chair, my hands twisted together. The lawyer unfolded the document and began to read. At first, it was what everyone expected. Bequests to charities. Instructions about some investments. Small personal items left to friends. Then he reached the part about the house, and regarding the property located at address, known as the family residence. Helena straightened, already half smiling. Of course, the house would go to them. It always had. I hereby leave full ownership of the property, including land, structure, and all related rights. He paused. To Mariana Sobernome, currently employed in this residence. Silence. Complete, suffocating silence. I thought I had misheard. Helena blinked, then laughed nervously. That's a mistake, she said quickly. You must have read the wrong name. The house belongs to the family. The lawyer shook his head calmly. No, Signora. This was a conscious, explicit decision. Donna Teresa was very clear. Ricardo exploded. This is absurd, he shouted. She's the maid, for God's sake. She cleans the floors, she changes the sheets. She's not family. The lawyer looked at him with the kind of patience only older professionals have. With respect, sir, family is not a legal category, he replied. Heir is, and she decided that Mariana is the heir to this property. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely breathe. Me, the maid, the girl from the rented room on the outskirts. Helena turned to me, her face red, her eyes wide with fury. "What did you do?" she hissed. "What did you say to her? Did you manipulate her? Did you play the victim?" I shook my head, tears in my eyes. I did nothing. I managed. I just took care of her." "That's exactly it," the lawyer said quietly. "She told me many times. She is the only one who takes care of me because she cares, not because she wants something. That's the kind of person who deserves a home." The days that followed were a blur of rage, threats, and negotiations. Helena and Ricardo tried everything. They called other lawyers. They tried to contest the will. They said Donna Teresa wasn't in her right mind. But the medical records were clear. She had been evaluated. She was lucid. The will was solid. They tried to talk to me directly. "You can't possibly want this," Helena said one night, her voice suddenly soft, almost sweet. "You don't know how to maintain a place like this. It's too much for you. We can compensate you. A generous amount. You give us the house back, and we'll all move on." Compensate, as if the mansion were a pair of shoes I had borrowed and should return. I thought about my mother, my brother, the years I had spent invisible in that same house. "I'm not selling," I said, my voice shaking but firm. This was her decision. I will honor it. Ricardo threatened to make my life very difficult. Bianca scoffed and called me a gold digger. Lucas made jokes online about ungrateful employees without mentioning names, but in the end, the law was on my side. The deed was changed. Legally, the house belonged to me. The poor maid they laughed at now owned the mansion. They had to move out. It didn't happen overnight. Legal processes take time, but the outcome was inevitable. Watching them pack their things was one of the strangest experiences of my life. The same people who told me never to use the front door were now carrying boxes through it. While I stood in the hallway holding the new set of keys with my name on the documents, Helena refused to look at me as she walked past. Ricardo muttered that this wasn't over. Bianca cried more over her walk-in closet than over her grandmother. Only Lucas paused for a second, looked at me, and said, "So, what now? You're the queen of the castle." I held his gaze. "No," I replied, "I'm just someone who knows the value of a home. Something you all forgot." When the last car left and the gate closed behind them, the house felt quiet. Not empty, just finally able to breathe. I walked through every room, touching the walls I had once only dusted, looking out windows I had cleaned from the outside. In Donna Teresa's room, I sat in her old armchair and whispered, "Thank you. I will take care of it. I promise." I moved my mother and my brother into the mansion, not to turn them into something they weren't, but to give them comfort they had never had. We didn't suddenly start acting like rich people. We ate at the same kitchen table. We laughed in the same loud way. We filled the rooms with new memories instead of empty status. Sometimes, neighbors would gossip. "Did you hear? The maid inherited the house." Can you imagine? Yes, I could. Because every floor I scrubbed, every pillow I fluffed, every night I stayed awake, listening to the house creak had prepared me for this. My revenge was not slamming the door in the old family's faces, though I won't lie, watching them leave was satisfying. My real revenge was giving that house something it had been missing for a long time. People who understood that a home is about more than chandeliers and marble. They called me the poor maid as if it would define me forever. But in the end, the only definition that mattered was the one written in black ink on legal paper. Owner. If you've ever been treated like you were invisible because of your job, your clothes, or where you come from, tell me in the comments what you would have done in my place. Would you have taken the house? Sold it, refused it out of pride? Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share this story with someone who needs to remember that the value of a person is never decided by the people who step on them. And if you want more long, emotional revenge stories about rich versus poor, toxic families, and karma working in silence, stay tuned. Season 1 still has plenty of stories to tell.